So here's my take on the Washington Redskins. Unfortunately, we have three of the most unlikable characters at the top of the food chain as any team in the NFL. We've got Dan Snyder, we've got Mike Shanahan, and we've got RG3. Now, Dan Snyder is here to stay. The guy with the big wallet isn't going anywhere. So there's not much we can do about him. Mike Shanahan has shown himself to be, at best, an average coach during his stay in Washington. His decision to leave RG3 in the game during the Seattle playoff game last year, I've said before, is one of the worst coaching decisions I've ever seen. Anybody who watched his time management last week in the Atlanta game at the end of the first half knows that this guy is clearly not the sharpest tool in the toolkit. On the other hand, we've had, 7, 8 coaches in the 15 years, in the last 15 years that Dan Snyder has run the organization. And so I question whether there's a benefit in getting rid of Mike Shanahan immediately. First of all, it's not clear that the person that we replace him with would be any better. And I still believe that the upheaval of starting over yet again and starting a new regime, I question whether that would be better than simply leaving the situation as it is. So I'm probably in favor of simply keeping Mike Shanahan, not because I think he's the second coming of Bill Parcells or Don Shula, but just because he's here, he's functional, and with the right cast of characters, you can win with Mike Shanahan, as he showed in Denver. Now we get to RG3. Now, RG3 began to lose me as a supporter last year. It was after the Cleveland game when RG3 was injured. Kirk Cousins came in and played lights out in that Cleveland game and won for the Redskins a game that we absolutely had to win to keep our playoff hopes alive then. Now you would have thought after that game that RG3 would have patted Cousins on the back, said, great job, you not only played great, but you allowed me to rest my leg for a week, which was very important to me, terrific job. Actually what happened was, after that game, RG3 complained that he hadn't played the game. He felt that he should have played the Cleveland game. Now I can understand a guy complaining about a game if we had lost the game, and then coming in and saying, well, geez, I should have played that game. If I had played, we might have won. But we won the game. We won the game with flying colors. And so for him to still be complaining about his own treatment, when in the weeks subsequent to that, we found out just how injured RG3 was. He was in no condition to play the Cleveland game. He wasn't in any condition to play the games after the Cleveland game. So at that point, it began to dawn on me that RG3 is a BS artist. Even after the Cleveland episode, where I thought he was speaking out of turn by complaining about a game that we won, after that, it's been a non-stop diet of RG3 trying to dictate how the team should be run during his rehab. Rather than just rehab quietly and get back into form, we had constant updates about what a great rehab he was undergoing. He was going to have the fastest rehab ever. He was a Superman. Then he began to complain that he wasn't being played during the preseason of this year. Then, in week 1 of the real season, we discovered that he wasn't healthy at all. He wasn't even prepared to play the first game of the season. Shanahan apparently believes that RG3 has been the sort of the favored player, the teacher's pet on the team, a guy with a relationship with the owner that is simply too close for the benefit of the team. Now, I find that ironic in the sense that I've always felt that it was Shanahan who treated RG3 as a special person, who treated him as the teacher's pet. It was RG3 who essentially bullied Shanahan into leaving him in that Seattle game. Shanahan now recognizes that he should have taken RG3 out of that game earlier. But at the time, the coach of the team was too scared to take his player out because, after all, RG3 was the star player. I guess you have to leave him in. Further, I've never liked the idea of designating a guy right off the bat to be the franchise player or the franchise quarterback. Why not make every position competitive? You know, the Seattle Seahawks paid Matt Flynn a king's ransom to come and play quarterback for them. Then they discovered that third-round draft pick Russell Wilson was the better player. So, to their great credit, they said, well, it doesn't make any difference how much money we're paying Matt Flynn. We're going to play the best player. We're going to play the guy who's making $500,000 a year rather than the guy who's making $5 million a year, because that's what's best for the team. Any team benefits from making every position competitive because it's a sign that this team is a meritocracy. And that's the furthest thing from what has happened in Washington. RG3 was appointed king, and barring some catastrophe, nobody was going to replace him. So I thought Kirk Cousins played a fabulous game against Cleveland last year, his first start ever, and I thought he played a fabulous game last week against Atlanta. Yes, he threw 2 interceptions, but overall, I thought he played a tremendous game. And if you want any proof of how good he looked, take a listen to Sports Talk Radio in Washington and listen to all the people talking conspiratorially about how Mike Shanahan installed a special new offense just for Kirk Cousins. It was the same offense that RG3's been running for 12 weeks. It just looked better. It looked different because all of a sudden you had a guy who was more decisive, who was making better decisions, and who was throwing the ball accurately. So all of a sudden, RG3 supporters thought, oh my God, they've been hiding this new game plan that they brought out just for Kirk Cousins to make RG3 look bad. No, I don't think so. Now, let me just say one thing about the two-point conversion. I hated the two-point conversion. And this is the reason I hated the two-point conversion. When you are 3-9, you're asking your players to go out there and play their hearts out, leave it all on the line, play as tenaciously as you did in the first game of the season, in the 13th game of the season. And they did. We didn't play well. We were very inept, but those guys kept playing, kept fighting, kept struggling to the point where, at the end, by all appearances, we had tied the game up. They put in a great effort in terms of heart, even if it wasn't a great effort in terms of quality. They gave everything they had. So here you've got the players giving everything they had in a meaningless game. What does the coach do? He coaches the end of the game as if it's a meaningless game. His attitude seemed to be, well, let's try a two-point conversion. If we win, that's great. If we don't win, big deal. Doesn't matter. Well, it mattered to me. I thought the players, the fans, Kirk Cousins, I thought we all deserved a win in that game. And I felt like those players were ready to fight and scrap for 15 more minutes of overtime until they won that game. And I thought if they had won the game, it would have provided an enormous lift to the city. So I don't think as a coach you can ask the players to give 100% effort and then at the end of the game make a coaching decision that suggests that the game didn't mean anything. How do you get your players to play hard next week when it's clear that you didn't think the game was worth winning? And if you think that the two-point conversion was the right tactic, there's a reason that NFL coaches don't routinely go for two-point conversions, because the chance of making it is less than 50%. It's not the percentage play in that situation. So, Enough said about that. What's my solution to the Redskins? Well, I already suggested that we should leave the default coach, Mike Shanahan, in. But here's what I would do. I would trade RG3 and make Kirk Cousins and Rex Grossman my quarterbacks. That's right, you heard me. I would trade RG3. And the reason I would trade RG3 is because I think RG3's trade value is better, is bigger than his real world value. People continually talk about, well, when RG3 gets back to his form of year one. I don't believe RG3 is ever going to get back to his form of year one. In part because I don't think his knee is going to be completely healthy. And even if it were completely healthy, what we learned in year one was that RG3 cannot play with that degree of recklessness and abandon and stay healthy. It's just not going to happen. I think he can be a good quarterback, but he's not a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins. I mean, when you consider that Kirk Cousins was making his second lifetime NFL start, and when you consider how good he has looked in 2 starts, to me that was mind-boggling. I would take the incredible trade value that we can get for RG3, which is going to be far better than the trade value that we could get for Kirk Cousins, and make Kirk Cousins my quarterback. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But many decisions that Mike Shanahan has made are not the ones that I would make. Just some food for thought. I'm Jeff Rowan. See you next time.